Very good morning to my dear students. Hope you all are safe and secure. Stay home, stay safe. Welcome to today's English class. In the previous class, we have started our Unit 8, Reading A, The Accidental Tourist. Let us once again revise the lesson. The Accidental Tourist is a humorous story. The narrator, Bill Bryson, narrates his experience as an air traveler. He is a man of confusion. There were many things that he could not properly do due to confusion. He goes many times to lavatory in a cinema, but standing in an alley on the wrong side of the self-locking door. He often forgets the number of his room and goes 2 to 3 times a day at the hotel reception to inquire about it. Once, he went on a visit to England along with his family for a week on Easter. The narrator was a card holder of the British Airways frequent flyer program. On the airport, he wanted to show that discount card in his bag. He tried to open the bag and the zip harder. The zip broke and the bag opened abruptly. Everything in his bag rained out and spread and around irregularly. His wife wondered at her husband's absent-mindedness. But I am afraid it's so. I always have catastrophes when I travel. Only on an aeroplane I leaned over to tie a shoelace just at the moment someone in the seat ahead of me threw his seat back into full recline and found myself pinned helplessly in the crash position. It was only by clawing the leg of the man sitting next to me that I managed to get myself freed. Here, meaning of catastrophes: a sudden event that caused many people to suffer. Meaning of freed, release from slavery. Once, when the narrator leaned over to tie a shoelace, just at the moment someone in the seat ahead of him threw his seat back into full recline. You can see in the picture children. And the narrator found himself in the crash position. Then the narrator scratched the leg of the man who is sitting next to him. That made him to get himself released from the slavery. On another occasion, I knocked a soft drink onto the lap of a sweet little lady sitting beside me. So on another occasion, the narrator knocked a soft drink onto the lap of a sweet little lady. So you can see here, see here in the picture, how did the narrator knock the soft drink onto the lap of a little lady who was sitting beside him. The flight attendant came and cleaned her up and brought me a replacement drink, and instantly I knocked it onto the woman again. So the flight attendant came and she cleared everything, and instantly she gave another drink to the narrator. And again same again instantly, again the narrator knocked it onto the woman. To this day, I don't know how I did it. So he's saying that I don't know how I did it. I just remember reaching out for the new drink and watching helplessly as my arm, like some cheap prop in one of those 1950s horror movies with a name like the Undead Limb, violently swept the drink from its perch and onto her lap. Here, meaning of prop, objects used in film. Meaning of perch, a place or position. So he says that he was watching helplessly as it is like a cheap prop, as it is like an object which is used in a film. He says that. The lady looked at me with the stupefied expression you would accept to receive from someone whom you have expectedly drenched, and uttered an oath that started with "oh", finished with "sake", and in between had some words that I have never heard uttered in public before, certainly not by man. The meaning of drenched: wet thoroughly, soak. Meaning of uttered: make a sound with one's voice. Narrator says that his hands were like some cheap prop. The writer himself says, moreover, his hands violently swept the soft drink onto the lap of the next seat lady for the second time. This, however, was not my worst experience on a plane flight. So the author is telling that this is not my worst experience on a plane flight. My worst experience as when I was writing important thoughts in a notebook, buy socks, clutch drinks carefully, etc., sucking thoughtfully on the end of my pen as you do, and fell into conversation with an attractive young lady in the next seat. So the author is telling that it is not his worst experience on a plane flight. His worst experience was that when he was writing his important thoughts in a notebook. So what are the important thoughts here, children? The important thoughts are buying socks, clutch drinks carefully. That means catch hold of the cool drinks carefully, etc. So these are the important things for the author. So he is writing in the notebook. Sucking thoughtfully on the end of my pen as you do. So while thinking, just what did he do? He is sucking, means keeping the pen inside his mouth on the end. You can see the end of the pen he is keeping inside his mouth and thinking about his important thoughts. And he was very busy in the conversation. Who is sitting beside the author? An attractive young lady. So the author put the pen into his mouth and he is simply thinking about his important thoughts and fell into the conversation with the young, attractive lady who is sitting in the next seat. I amused her for perhaps 20 minutes with a scattering of urbane bonmot, then retired to the lavatory when I discovered that the pen had leaked and that my mouth, chin, tongue, teeth and gums were now a striking scrub-resistant navy blue and would remain so for several days. So he forgot that he was sucking inside his mouth, and just after 20 minutes, he just went into the lavatory. Here meaning of urbane, polished and cultured. Meaning of bonmots, clever remarks. So what are the remarks on his mouth there completely? When that means that he remembered when he went to the lavatory, he discovered that the pen had leaked. He found that the pen was leaked and completely his mouth, chin, tongue, teeth and gums were now striking like scrub resistant. Completely it was in which color there? They were polished with completely navy blue. And he says that it remains for so many days, several days. So the author's worst experience was that when he got his mouth, chin, gums and tongue became blue colored. He was writing some thoughts on a paper, isn't it? He was writing some thoughts on his paper. So what were his important thoughts, children? Buying socks, clutch drinks carefully. He fell onto the conversation with the lady sitting next to him. He had put his pen in his mouth. So isn't it? He put his pen into his mouth. So it leaked and his mouth was covered with ink. He did not realize, the author did not realize it until he went to the lavatory. So you will understand, I trust, when I tell you how much I ache to be served. I would wave just once in my life to rise from a dinner table without looking as if I have just experienced an extremely localized seismic event, get in a car and close the door without leaving 14 inches of coat outside, wear light-colored trousers without discovering at the end of the day that I have at various times sat on a chewing gum, ice cream, cough syrup and motor oil. But it is not to be. Here meaning of ache. A continuous or prolonged full pain in one part of the body. Meaning of so, sophisticated, polite. Meaning of seismic event. A powerful happening like an earthquake. Here the narrator says that he always feels that some of his seismic events. He says that what are his seismic events there? When he gets into a car, close the door without having his 14 inches coat leaving outside the car itself. He forgets that one. And he always wear light colored trousers without discovering of the day. and always sits various times. He sits on the chewing gum, ice cream, cough syrup, and motor oil. He says that some of his seismic events, and he says that because of that he faces a lot of trouble. So the narrator was so fed up with his eating habit that he preferred not to eat while on the boat. So the author was fed up to eat on the boat, that means in the plane. So his wife used to take some precautions. She told the children to take the lids of the food for him out, put their hoods up when daddy is going to cut the meat. I never did get my frequent flying miles, by the way. I never do. I couldn't find the card in time. This has become a real frustration for me. Everyone is forever flying off to Bali first class with their air miles. I never get to collect anything. I must fly 1 lakh miles a year. Yet, I have accumulated only about 212 air miles divided between 23 airlines. Here meaning of accumulated, gather, together. So here the narrator says that he often forget to ask for air miles. He could never take benefits from the discount schemes. It was his state of mind that he lost a golden opportunity to avail himself of a first-class flight to Bali. This is because either I forget to ask for the air miles when I check in, or I remember to ask for them, but the airline then manages not to record them, or the check-in clerk informs me that I am not entitled to them. In January, on a flight to Australia, a flight for which I was going to get about 1 million air miles, the clerk shook her head when I presented my card and told me I was not entitled to any. So, the author says that in January, when he is on a flight to Australia, when he is going to Australia, he presented his card. But when he presented his card, the clerk shook her head that it was not entitled to any, that was not referred to any of his identification. Why? The ticket is in the name of B. Bryson and the card is in the name of W. Bryson. I explained to her the close and vulnerable relationship between Bill and William, but she wouldn't have it. So I didn't get my air miles and I won't be flying to Bali first class just yet. Perhaps just as well, really, I could never go that long without eating. So the narrator questions that why I am not entitled to get the points through, though he had a card, because the ticket was in the name of Bill Bryson, but the card was in the name of W. Bryson. Because of that, he had not entitled the points, though he had a card. Here meaning of venerable, accorded a great deal of respect, especially because of age, wisdom or character. Though Bill Bryson explained the relationship between W. Bryson, the lady did not accept the card. But as he has to travel through he was feeling little bit unhappy because he couldn't able to travel in the first class to Bali. And still again he says that I can't go for a long airway without eating anything. Once, let us go through the glossary of the lesson. Meaning of catastrophe, a sudden event that causes many people to suffer. Meaning of freed, release from slavery. Meaning of perch, a place or position. Meaning of drench, wet thoroughly, soak. Meaning of uttered, make a sound with one's voice. Meaning of urbane, polished and cultured. Meaning of bondsmots, clever remarks. Meaning of seismic event, a powerful happening like an earthquake. Meaning of serve, sophisticated, polite. Meaning of accumulated, gather, together. Meaning of venerable, accorded a great deal of respect, especially because of age, wisdom or character. Meaning of prop, objects used in film. Meaning of stupefied, amazed. Now let us go through the question answers. The narrator's wife looked at him with an expression of wonder. What might be the reason be? So the narrator's wife looked at the narrator with an expression of wonder. What might be the reason, children? Because when the narrator is busy on a job, he was carrying several things with him. The narrator's wife had seen all of them when it was abruptly open, spread all over, isn't it? The narrator opened the zip abruptly and all spread over. The reason for her wonder might be the way he was created a mess all around himself. Because he created a mess around himself, the narrator's wife looked at him with an wonder. The narrator lamented that he had met with many catastrophes in his travel. What were they? Do you think they were real catastrophes? So we have different catastrophes in the lesson. Once again, let us revise the different catastrophes, children. Do you think that they were real catastrophes? Once on an aeroplane, he leaned over to tie a shoelace. Just at a moment, someone in the seat ahead of him threw his seat back into full recline and he found himself in the crash position, isn't it? On another occasion, he knocked a soft drink onto the lap of a sweet little lady sitting beside him. The flight attendant brought him a replacement drink and instantly he knocked it onto the woman again. They were not real catastrophes. They were just accidents by mistake due to confusion, because the narrator was in a big confusion, so the accidents also happened by mistake due to confusion. How did the narrator free himself from the crash position, children? How did he become free when he leaned to tie the shoelace? He was in a crash position. How did he make himself free? The narrator leaned down to tie his shoelaces, isn't it? In the meantime, the person on the seat ahead of him pushed back his seat. As a result, he got stuck in kneel-down position. He managed to get himself free by clawing the leg of the man sitting next to him. By clawing means by scattering the person sitting beside him. So just then he became free from the crash position. Do you think the narrator's hand are like some cheap prop? If yes, what made you think so? So do you think that the hand was like in a cheap prop, children? Now let us go through the answer. The narrator knocked the soft drink onto the lap of a sweet little lady beside him twice in confusion. He knocked the soft drink in a little bit of confusion. He said that he did not know how he did the mindless act. He says that he did not know how did he do with this mindless act. From this, I think that his hands had acted like some cheap prop. He says that his hands had acted like a cheap prop. Why did the narrator's wife say to the children? What did the narrator's wife say to the children? Take the lids off the food for daddy. Why did the narrator's wife say like this, children? Because his wife knew his knack of creating misery for himself. As a precautionary measure, she asked her children to do normal chores for their father. See, because of that measure, she knew that the knack of creating misery for himself. The wife knew about the narrator, so she informed to her children to take the precautionary measures. Coming to the next question. Did the narrator do all the awkward things intentionally or accidentally? So this is the main question, children. Did the narrator do intentionally or accidentally all the awkward things? Give your reasons. That the narrator does not do intentionally. He is by nature a man of confusion. So what is the nature of the narrator, children? He is a man of confusion. He himself had admitted that he gets confused easily. He himself says that he often gets confused easily. He had many experiences during the traveling, and he also explains his experiences during the traveling. Next question. What kind of person was the narrator? How can you justify your opinion? So what kind of opinion? What kind of person was the narrator, children? Can you justify your opinion? Yes. The narrator cannot do a simple day-to-day activity without confusion, isn't it? We can easily identify that because the narrator was a man of confusion. His day-to-day things, activities also, he does with confusion. He often forgets the way to lavatory. He finds it difficult to remember his hotel room number. He forgets almost everything which is required to carry out his routine activity. Most of us never ponder how effortlessly we carry out our routine activity. The routine things are fixed in our brains. Isn't it? Daily routine things are fixed in our brains. But some people, like the narrator, find it difficult and almost impossible. Read the lesson and write the glossary and comprehension in your classwork and send it to my given WhatsApp number. Thank you.